This is called creeping. It all started when Margaret took the blouse that Janet had given her to the charity shop. It hadn't fit her very well. She hadn't liked the fabric very much, and her collection of blouses was already larger than she wanted. Whilst both Margaret and Janet had a great appreciation for blouses, their taste in fabrics was extremely different, and they certainly didn't look alike. They made a rather odd pair, having met when their children both took them to a guided botanical gardens walk for Mother's Day. Mutually admiring some hydrangeas, Janet and Margaret had just clicked, though Janet was enough years Margaret's senior to be a contemporary of her parents and never failed to use the fact to her advantage. The Wednesday after Margaret got rid of the blouse was her monthly outing with Janet to get tea and scones at the Botanical Gardens, a ritual they'd honoured ever since their first meeting. To Margaret's surprise, when she arrived to pick up Janet, Janet immediately asked after the blouse. "I'm trying to get into the minimalist lifestyle," Margaret tried to explain, looking guilty. "There's just so much clutter in my house and it makes me feel stressed. The blouse didn't fit me all that well, so I took it to the Red Cross shop." While Margaret was speaking, Janet was looking at her with a dark, sceptical expression, pursing her coral lipsticked lips. "Well, I think that's rather rude," she said, patting her hair and looking out of the window. Then she muttered a bit under her breath, in what was obviously supposed to be a voice only she could hear. But Margaret could clearly hear the words minimalism and modern tosh. They were rather quiet for the rest of the drive. Later, as she spooned cream onto her scone, Margaret saw that Janet was looking relaxed and watching the ducks wandering back and forth by the water lily pond. And it's a little illustration of the tea and scones, which she decided to try again to explain about minimalism. "When we first moved into our house, it was lovely," she said. "We had just a few things that we actually used, and a couple of ornaments that we got from people that were really special, like my grandma's vase. But then, the longer we've lived there, the more stuff has come creeping in. The kids have toys they grew out of ages ago stuffed in the shed. Mark is always buying things on the internet." Janet tutted at this. She'd heard about people getting into terrible trouble that way. "And I know we don't need all this stuff everywhere. It makes me feel a bit claustrophobic being surrounded by too many things." Janet poured a tiny drop of milk into her tea, getting more on the table than in the drink, and mopping it up with her paper napkin. Her bright coral lipstick made a confused straight line. "But some things have sentimental value. When I have all the things people have given me over the years around me, I know they thought of me, and I remember them. It's kind of like being among friends." Margaret nodded and shook her head slightly at the same time, so that she ended up doing a little circle. "I think that's what my family think. I keep trying to tidy up and get rid of old stuff, but there's always someone saying, 'No, Marg,' or 'No, Mum, don't get rid of that old wetsuit, it might come in handy.' Or, 'Oh no, you can't throw out that broken toy, it has too many memories attached to it.' Sometimes I just get rid of things without telling them." Janet gasped in horror. "They never notice." "How dreadful," said Janet. "I can see I'd better keep a close eye on you at my house. I still have the corks from the champagne bottles at all my children's weddings, strung up in a row above my fireplace with the anniversary dates written on them." Later though, when Margaret dropped her home, Janet had a look around her living room. There were cards shoved into a dresser that were from 3 birthdays ago. Folded over the back of her rocking recliner armchair, as though it was a blanket, was a jumper 3 sizes too large for her wiry frame. A friend had bought that jumper for her at the market one day, when she'd not only incorrectly judged the weather, but also misplaced her purse. It had never fitted. Janet picked it up and put it on her lap, sitting down on the chair. She wondered whether Irene remembered that day as well as she did. Would Irene still have the broken umbrella they'd sheltered under, hobbling along like a 3-legged race, trying to both keep dry on the way to the bus? Back at Margaret's house, everyone was having a coffee and Margaret was telling her family about Janet's attitude to clutter. "She's worse than any of you," she told them. "She said that her cork collection could come in handy for something, and it would be wasteful to get rid of it." Mark considered. "It might actually come in handy," he started, and Margaret groaned. "No, Mark, don't start," she interrupted. "I'm trying to work out why we keep things we don't really need." She went over to the kitchen and picked up a vase. "Like this. I have lots of vases already, so why have I kept this one?" There was a lot of murmuring about it being a gift and how it probably meant a lot to Margaret's friend. "She might not even remember it," Margaret mused. "It was just a Kris Kringle." But she still didn't put it in the almost empty box of things to get rid of. After everyone else had gone to bed, Margaret decided to question herself on this. She took the vase over to the table and sat down looking at it. What was so special about it that would make her keep it when she already had 4? She remembered the happy occasion when she'd received this as her gift, and how the group of friends had had an evening full of games and hilarity. When was that? At least 6 months ago now. Was keeping it giving her the illusion of being in touch? She thought about how Janet had said that having these tokens of other people's thoughts around was like being among friends. Suddenly it made sense to her why the clutter was so stressful. Holding on to all these little pieces of people, cramming them in, hoping in the back of our head that this makes up for not talking much. We're running out of room for any new ones, she thought. We have this false company that at the same time feels as though our lives are too full and we can't do the right thing by people. She sipped her peppermint tea and shook her head at the cat. "I don't know, Missy. What shall we do?" she asked. The cat walked away, tail up like a snob, jumped onto the sofa, curled up, and went to sleep. No help from there then. Margaret got her phone out and took a picture of her vase. Then she got out her other vases and lined them up on the table like a strange wall, thinking she would make a post on Facebook about how hard it was to deal with clutter. As she scrolled back through the photos she'd taken, Margaret had a sudden brainwave. She opened a message to her friend who'd given her the vase and inserted the photo of it. She typed, "Remember when you got me this? What a fun night. I loved this vase because it showed that you really notice what sort of things I like. Now I'm trying to declutter and let go of a lot of my things, and I realized that the real reason I held on to this was to remind me of you and the fun night we had. I think it would be a better idea to actually catch up again. Would you like to plan a catch-up?" After sending the message, Margaret stayed up late, finding bits of clutter that belonged to her, taking photographs of them, and writing messages of thanks to the people who'd given the gifts, inviting them to make new memories. The next time she saw Janet, Margaret told her what she'd been doing. Janet looked a bit concerned, but she seemed much less sceptical than before. "Well," she said in slight consternation, "well, what will you do if people give you new gifts?" Margaret gave a proud wiggle. "I've already planned for that," she told Janet. "I will keep things that have a practical use as long as I don't have one already. If it's an ornament or something like that, I'll give it pride of place in the middle of the table where I see it every day for 1 month, a bit like the Christmas tree. At the end of the month, I'll take a picture and contact the person again to catch up, or just to let them know I'm thinking of them, and then I'll take it to a charity where someone else can benefit from it." Janet looked very uncertain and patted her hair combs and said, But when she got home, she phoned Irene and had a good laugh about keeping the jumper. After their chat, it didn't seem quite so important to hold on to it. Janet found that she couldn't bring herself to get rid of the corks, but she did clean out the dresser. To both women's surprise, although Margaret now routinely got rid of some of the things people gave her, her friends and extended family began to report they felt more as though she loved and was thinking of them than when she kept everything. Margaret developed little cards, both physical and electronic, into which she could easily insert her photos of the objects and little notes. She was seeing much more of many of her friends and family. Margaret's house felt much more restful, and Janet's was a little more organised. Margaret was congratulating herself on winning the war on clutter one Saturday afternoon, sitting back at the dining table admiring a single indoor succulent plant in a tiny glazed pot. She thought perhaps she was ready to tackle some parts of the house she'd not faced until now. I know, I'll sort out that wardrobe in the computer room, she thought, standing up purposefully. The rest of the room can wait, but I'm sure I can at least make the wardrobe easier to use. She went carefully into the computer room and slid open one of the wardrobe doors. Out fell an avalanche of 3 old jumpers, a teddy bear with holes, some deflated beach balls, a pair of sneakers, a cardboard box with a door drawn on it, a snorkel, the instructions for assembly of 3 model aeroplanes, a pair of socks, and a set of nesting plastic snack bowls that Margaret had put in her take to the charity shop box 3 weeks ago. Surrounded by this small landslide, Margaret sucked in air through her nose. "Mark! What is this doing here?"